Welcome back to Animal Crossing New Horizons. I'm dear darling. Shall we see what's going on a lovely island of Fawnhallow today? I'm going to be real, I just forgot to record an Animal Crossing today. And it wasn't until now where I was like, oh, wait a minute. So we'll have a shorter one as per usual. Of this sort of thing. And it means I did record other stuff. So I guess I must have thought I recorded Animal Crossing in that group as well, but then I didn't. You'll be glad to know I finally beat that 9 souls boss. My word, took a while though, and it's a really weird way I ended up beating it. But so, good evening everyone. I'm here with a late night broadcast. Hope I can make it through this. Right now in Fawnhallow it's 1:39 AM on what should be Tuesday, January 27th, 2026. So apparently we're shooting stars at the moment, which we'll promptly ignore. It genuinely was quite a tough boss. Glad I made it through it though. Glad I pulled through in the end. But yeah, I'm not really sure what I'm going to talk about. Listen, I'm just trying to think. There's not really much to say about the catch stuff at the moment. There's not actually a lot of things going on in the other stuff. I'm playing through Enfield still. I'm actually having quite a fun time with it, so it's actually been pretty engaging. But apart from that, I don't know, I guess I've got to find a conversation topic. I felt like there was something I was going to talk about, but I genuinely can't remember what it was anymore. Which is not particularly conducive, I think, for actually starting off a conversation, I would say. I don't know, let's see r/games. See what's going on, see if there's anything interesting here. Oh yeah, Terraria, big and bold. It's still crazy how Terraria is still getting updates. That one's a bit insane. There's a bigger and bolder update. I already talked about game updates, so I talked about Rapid Steel. Okay, let's choose a random topic from wherever we go. Why not talk about be like volcanoes? I genuinely have no idea why. I mean, it's interesting to think about. Look, this is a very random niche thing, but the subject of geography actually encompasses like a surprising amount of stuff. And when I'm thinking of it, of course, in school terms. But I think, like, you know, geography often associated with things like things to do with physical Earth, or what you'd classically known as like physical geography, or even geology, depending on how specific you go, of like what geography is stereotypically known for. But there's always, you know, interesting thing about how geography also, I don't want to say for whatever reason, because I don't think it's like unsatisfactory reason, it's just perhaps a bit more unexpected if anything, how it encompasses human geography as well. Which if anything kind of feels like a sociology sort of thing. I was going to say it because I was like, the only thing I know about volcanoes is what we learned in geography. But I'm also just like, that almost feels like a weird subject to learn about geography, to learn about volcanoes in. But I'm also like, what other subject would you put it in? I never really sat down to think about geography. It's actually quite a strange subject with all the different things which make up parts of it. You learn a lot about, you know, tectonic plates and like how rivers are formed and all that good stuff. And you also learn about like what's it called, like case studies about how, I don't know, like migrations of certain groups of people or something, and the effect on like sociology and the economy. And you know, it's very interesting. Or you learn about like how certain cultures, you know, shift and change. I assume again, I had a geography GCSE. I took it no further. But I do have a friend who did do geography. And honestly, it sounded like he did pretty cool things regarding it. So I remember he actually travelled to Greenland as part of his degree, whatever, which is a crazy, like, random thing to be doing, you know. Like, not many opportunities you would have to go to Greenland. But I don't know. I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to get at. It's like, it's not strange, but it's almost a shame, I would say, how many of these subjects, topics or whatever, have such a strong association with them in the first place, which completely rules out what could be a particular interest of someone in the subject if they just gave it a shot, you know. Like if you're someone who doesn't like the scientific part of geography, you know, how rivers are formed, volcanoes and earthquakes or whatever, but you would be someone who kind of likes sociology or whatever, like studying human behaviour and like phenomena, culture, etc. Then if you just take the stereotypical view of what geography is in the first place, or being physical geography, at least from my naive assumption that but not everyone follows, but people generally have, you'd be cutting yourself off from a whole branch of a subject which you never know, could be your passion, to be honest. That just seems like a shame, you know, because I feel like I always talk about it in the start of mathematics, right? You know, maths does incorporate like a lot of different varieties of topics, you know, from a very, very pure maths about, you know, what was the purest form of maths? That's a good question, I'm not sure. Maybe logic, because that's like building the whole structures of maths, I suppose, from the principles of the axioms, aka from the starting blocks of what maths is in the first place, to very, very applicable maths, which, oh no, shovel. Like pretty applicable maths, which would be things like, you know, financial maths and predictive models, I suppose, over like trends of economic data or something, or even much more physical thing about like working out how fluids should move. And while I still understand and I still empathise that, you know, I'm not saying that you should love maths just because it has more of a variety than one might initially think. It's almost just a bit of a shame that things can get so brushed off easily, and I don't just mean this for maths, I mean this for every subject, you know. You know, like art is like such a wide encompassing range of things, all about creative expression, but there's like a million different mediums you can take as part of art, you know. Limiting yourself to only one, to what is conventionally thought of as like paint on canvas, and even then it's not even like specific about what paint. I wonder what people would sum it up with if they were to like describe it succinctly, you know. I guess it would be oil paints on canvas. Maths would obviously be arithmetic. Geography would surely be like mountains or something. History is always wartime, right? And I'm not saying these are necessarily wrong, because it's not like maths doesn't have arithmetic, it's not like geography doesn't have a study of mountains, and or there aren't, or you know, like oil paint is not one of the, or painting I suppose in general is not one of the largest mediums of art, but it's like, I don't know, the way, maybe this is turning into a criticism, but also more like a shame of how curriculums and schools are formed, is that a lot of the time they only introduce you to focus on one sort of area rather than an introduction to many different things. Which, you know, I also understand, like not everyone, you know, we unfortunately are not in a world where each person can have their own individual tutor and education for exactly what they want. At the end of the day, like, people have to be taught together, like, in a group, because that's just kind of how it works. But it's like a shame, you know. Like some of the art lessons I remember are definitely the ones which had quite a bit more variety, I think, with necessarily the things that were being introduced, you know. I still remember that clay lesson that we did. I can't remember what it's called, but the one where you like make stamps and like you scoop out like linoleum, like lino cuts, is that it? Yeah, we did lino cuts, and then we made like stamps of our own faces and stuff. You know. And to be fair, I would say, at least my school did a pretty good job at, during art and even graphics to a certain extent, to introduce to as many different mediums as you can. Of course, that does also come with a caveat that we basically spend no time with one medium, so if you actually did like one of the mediums, it'd be like, okay, well, you know, how do you pursue it further? I suppose in school you can't yet take it out of school, but if you don't know how to do that, then that's always the difficult part, isn't it? this is going to be a hard swerve, which will be a conversation for another time. But it's always something very interesting. Like, I'm not a parent, but I think definitely one of them, not what biggest worries, but like a thing which I think about would be like, what if I had a child who became like an expertise or super passionate about something which I basically had no idea about? Like, what if I had a child and they were just an amazing footballer or something, or like some sort of sporting person, you know? Like, if they were like super interested in maths or science, yeah, I would know how to sort of cultivate that. Like, I knew like sort of what directions they go in. If they wanted to pursue like artistic things, I could certainly have a hand in helping that. And things like that. But if they were just like a sports person, I'd just be like, well, unless my partner knows, and I'm just like, how do you do this? How do you facilitate this? Obviously, I think the answer is you find someone who can also bring them a mentorship side, and you as a parent would just support them. But it feels like, you know, it's a bit different, you know, the way you can support them because of the knowledge you bring. Anyway, that's not the point. This is more focusing from a child's perspective now, of how easy subjects get summed up. Which, you know, I'm not saying that's an unreasonable thing for things to be summarised in some way. You know, there must be some way of condensing down like swaths of information into one thing, but it's almost a shame how much gets lost, I think, in it all, you know. Just one slice of a portion of what you do. I mean, I feel like other subjects, you know, obviously get much more of a spotlight. Obviously, maths is a very biased one, maths and sciences, but even English, like the way they structure it is also very weird, because in that, like, we're doing like a different sort of medium, different thing each time. It's like a literal sample platter. But in English literature, you hard focus on like certain types of literature, right? Like we did like 4 different Shakespeare plays or something, which I'm not saying Shakespeare is bad or anything like that, but I'm like, why is it so hard focused, like laser focused on just one thing? Because I was speaking about this the other day with a friend, when we did history GCSE, even like pre-history GCSE, the only time periods we covered were basically pre-GCSE was like World War One essentially, and then when you do GCSE you do World War Two into like the Cold War essentially. But I was like, history is thousands of years old. There's so many more different things, you know. Like, you get things all the way back into like ancient Egyptian ages or things like that, or, you know, you can do like the Romans, even in, you know, UK itself. You've got Victorian era, Elizabethan era, Tudor eras, you have medieval eras, things like that. And that's only focusing on the UK, you know. I'm not saying it's a bad thing necessarily that you do such laser focused case studies, but I guess it's like it's almost a shame that we don't live in a perfect world where you couldn't get a tailored education system, because it'd be like, imagine you went to my school, you love in a parallel universe, or you went to a different school who studied, I don't know, like ancient Rome or something. But the history classes that we have only focus on World War II, which has, you know, maybe not your interest in the slightest. You know, you could be missing out on a huge opportunity there. But it's not like you can really just like move school and be like, I'm going to choose one. Like, I mean, to be fair, I guess that's kind of like what the specialisation portion of like going to university is about. It's weird because I simultaneously don't want specialisation but do want specialisation. I'm not saying that I have any answers whatsoever, I'm just sort of commenting about it. That it seems like a bit of a shame. I suppose luckily on my end that there's not maths and science, you know, and well, maths especially tends to sort of cover the same sort of building blocks, because, you know, there's almost like a set order you need to learn things in maths, not quite literally, not quite strictly, but it does branch out like a tree diagram in a sense. Like, it doesn't really make sense to learn like calculus if you don't know like the basics of linear algebra, right? Doesn't make sense to learn about Markov chains if you don't know like about hypothesis testing, stuff like that. In a certain degree I guess you could, but in a certain degree I'm just like, you're just like, it sort of builds upon each other, you know. But history of it just being one continuous timeline, like, of course you can learn about ancient Romans independently of learning about, you know, the Cold War, independently learning about, I don't know, ancient eras in like China or something. But you don't get as much of that option. And again, I am emphasising the fact that like I understand why. I don't expect every history teacher to have like encyclopedic knowledge on everything. Like, that's not even remotely possible to cover for all of that, I suppose. But That's kind of like why the concept of modules exists. But it just seems like a bit of a shame, you know, the way that some of the subjects are structured. Like, why didn't we do that in history? Why don't we have like a sample pattern learning about all these different like civilizations or something? And then when it comes to doing history GCSE, sure, like maybe we all learn about World War II, then we can actually choose a different module as all the part that you do want to learn about. And the answer is probably then you would have to hire like a different subject specialising in each module, and then it doesn't make sense if a different amount of students choose different modules in certain times, which they actually didn't. It was an issue in physics, right? Now it's sort of branching off. That I remember in physics, this was at A level I believe, that there's a set like core structure to the curriculum that we learned, but then there was basically one module which was an optional module which you could choose one of 4 different options. I can't remember, one was like astrophysics. I think one was like turning points in history. I think one was like thermodynamics, and I can't remember what the 4th one was. Something like that. But the thing is, like, what we had to do is like we had to do the same, like everyone in our physics class basically had to choose and vote together to be like, which one are we doing? We had to do the same one. And I think most of the physics classes, like I think we did thermodynamics or something. Can I even remember? Was it AQA? Let's see if the curriculum's still the same. AQA, physics A level curriculum. Like all but one class did the same thing. Oh, optional, here we go. Oh, it was astrophysics, medical physics, engineering physics, turning point, electronics. Oh, maybe we did turning points then. Because that was the thing, because I remember we had like a couple of like people who were taking physics to do medicine, so obviously they wanted to do medical physics, but I remember like in a different class, like they rated to do astrophysics. I didn't really care what I did because it didn't bother me which one we learned about. Or maybe we did engineering physics. I don't remember. No, I think another class did turning points in physics. What's in turning points? Cathode ray, electron, principle of milligauss? Okay, there was no way we did that. Maybe we did engineering physics then. Oh no, we definitely did engineering physics because we did rotational motion. Because I remember, because our class was very maths heavy. Like, most of the people who were doing it were also doing it for the maths angle, or like, were engineers. Oh, that's why, because there's thermodynamics in here. But yeah, then like, one class did astrophysics, the other did turning points, but then I think the rest did engineering physics or something. Or maybe it's like turning points was the most common one, I can't remember. But it kind of sucks if you're in that class and be like, oh, I'm the only like medical physics student here. I mean, hopefully they would like know, you know, these other students who are doing medicine, let's try and put them all into one. What I think is that they just took medical physics like independently. By themselves. It's just a shame, you know. And it is a restriction by the nature of like, this makes no sense for how school should be structured. I'm not saying it shouldn't, because I mean, in an ideal world, you know, you can pick and choose, I suppose, your class, I suppose, and it just makes sense. But you know, there's location, there's hiring difficulties and stuff like that. There's a lot of different things which go into it, which make it rather difficult. Anyway, I don't really know what my conclusion is on this. I guess the conclusion is kind of like, that sucks. And that's about it. But on that note, I'm going to wrap this episode up here. So if you have been watching, thank you very much. It's been Adam Crossing New Horizons. I've been Dear Darling. Likes, comments, subscription, shares, greatly appreciated. Socials, Discord down below. Hope to see you again, but for now, it's our farewell. So until next time, bye bye for now.